Bring out your dead. I'm not dead yet. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle Hoss. And in this video, we need to talk about books that were on the brink, but now all of a sudden aren't quite dead yet. There you see it, guys, right in front of you. Apparently, we are going to get the long anticipated, maybe was going to happen, maybe wasn't going to happen, Vision series. And now, suddenly, we have movement for West Coast Avengers number 45, the book that started it all, everyone's favorite first appearance, that's actually a second appearance, that's actually technically a third appearance. But in this video, we're going to talk about it regardless. So before I get into it, if you guys could like, comment, subscribe, I would appreciate it. Helps for the channel doing those things. But let us get into this video here today. Marvel Vision series greenlit at Disney Plus with Paul Bettany to reprise the role. Reprise the role? Reprise the role. This is an article coming off of Deadline. I'm not really going to go into it because, as these articles tend to do, it's a lot of fluff. Nothing really to talk about other than the fact that the show is going to get a release in 2026. 5 years later, here we go. The follow-up to WandaVision. As soon as Vision discovered that he was the White Vision, I am Vision, and then flew off into the sunset, it took us 5 years to figure out what's actually going to happen to him. But that doesn't stop comic book collectors from actually getting excited about White Vision. I get nostalgic here, guys. I think about how I've been doing this channel for 4 years, and White Vision was kind of a seminal moment, I think, for a lot of channels during COVID. I can remember seeing the market and following it leading up to the Disney Plus series and then going episode to episode. And it was that one episode when we got the reveal of White Vision. My God, what would it have been? I mean, the show would air at like midnight, and then 1 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. All of a sudden on eBay, the sales went crazy for this thing. In fact, let me jump forward a little bit. What do we have? You can see this book. Talk about the best return on your money ever. Going from $200 overnight to a massive $1,400 sale in a CGC 9.8 for that White Vision. And you guys can see how much this book has cratered. I mean, it didn't take long for it to fall off the cliff, only a couple of months. But even then it held up, around the $500, $600 range, went up to $650, then down to $400, then down to $300, then all the way back down to where it is today, dropping all the way to $155 on the low. But with the announcement of the series coming back, here we go, guys. Once again, lots of sales for West Coast Avengers number 45. I mean, this is just all of yesterday. Of course, this is a book, it's a Copper Age book that, it's going to see sales every now and again. I mean, you might get 1 to 2 sales a day. That was kind of where this book was at. Not a lot of 9.8 sales, although you did have a 9.8 signed right there by Paul Bettany selling at $255. But you had a couple graded sales, basically, the floor price of $50 right here, some raw copies. But when we got this announcement, we actually saw a flurry, starting off right here with a 9.2 going into a 9.6 for $110. $25 here, $70 for a 9.2 there, $25 there, slash price right there, another 9.6 at $125, another slash price. People making deals. Someone buying the 9.8 for $197, white pages, beautiful copy, more slash prices, more 9.6s, more 9.4s, and another 9.8 with another slash price right there. So pretty interesting to see that. And again, while it's not necessarily record prices that we're seeing, what I find fascinating about it is that everything comes back. It's all in cycles, guys. It's all in cycles. Books get excited again. And one of the things I've talked about here on the channel before is, the turnover of collectors and the churn that we've seen with a lot of, comic book people. I feel like the window for collectors is 2 years of, really hardcore collecting and then 4 years for a full cycle, right? Where, we talk about like the journey of the comic book collector, that one whiteboard video I did where, people kind of come into the hobby, they get, really invested, they go hard for about 2 years, and then they kind of fade away on year number 3, maybe they last to year number 4, and then, the cycle repeats. You get a whole new batch of collectors. And that's what's so interesting to me about a lot of these purchases, where I have to wonder if this is just new people Maybe they weren't even collecting at the time in which, the WandaVision series came out. And while a lot of you who are watching this video thinking to yourself, man, I wouldn't even pay $200 for this book, even at a 9.8 level, for other people, they have different types of price memory where they think to themselves, just a year ago it was $425. I mean, $200 is not bad. They don't remember that back in 2018, it was a $124 book. I mean, based on the sales today, it's at $155 on the low for the year. I mean, that's still better than what some of the sales were back in 2019. And so I think it's really interesting that we're kind of reaching that full cycle where once again, people are excited about a lot of these books. And you have to sort of wonder if we're ironically going to hit this sort of weird phase 4 nostalgia where all of a sudden a lot of these shows that came out are like, oh yeah, hey, Captain America 25. Maybe I should pick up that book now. Or like, oh yeah, first appearance of Mobius. Or, oh yeah, what was going on with Kate Bishop? Maybe I should pick up some of those keys, which we're going to talk about in a second here. But again, this is one that's really interesting. And I did that video last week where I talked about, books being, nothing is rare. And kind of a finer point in relation to that video topic was talking about, key sales in their raw form versus their graded form. And this is a good example of a book that really got inflated because of the bottlenecking or of lack of, perceived supply in the graded market, where now you can see that there's 2,400 universal copies. But I'm pretty sure about this, that at the time of WandaVision, when this book was just getting hot, I have to think that the census was only around like maybe 200 or 300 copies. So in the last 4 years, as this book has been established as quote unquote a key book, we've seen an influx of supply. I mean, maybe it wasn't 2,000 copies that came in. I can't exactly remember, but I'm pretty certain that we've seen this supply certainly double, if not triple, ever since we actually got that show, to where now you have 292 9/8s on the census. I mean, at the time of that $1,400 sale, it's like that was probably the only copy that was on eBay, and somebody was just savvy enough to price it at that high price of $1,400. Now, last little thing before we move on here and talk about the next interesting book is, if you are somebody who really wants this book, I'm not somebody who personally likes newsstands. It doesn't really, do it for me. But at the same time, if this is your favorite character, this is your favorite book, the newsstand does still seem to be much more rare than that of the direct edition, where you can actually see this is, a book that's 1989, where newsstands actually did start to get a little more rare. And you can see that in the last, handful of years, we've only had 5 sales for the newsstand here at the 9.8 compared to the direct edition where you've had many, many sales. You can see that the last sale was actually $480 compared to the $1,200 that the book actually got, at the start of the WandaVision show, which again is a big drop off, but $480 as the floor price is a lot better than, the last sale that we saw, where it was, $197 for the direct edition. But there you see it, not too rare on the, Okay. Newsstand with 3 spine ticks and a worn corner. Well, if you actually can find a real 9.8 newsstand of this book, it might still be one to pick up. Now, speaking of nostalgic Phase 4 books and things like that, we have this little interesting piece of news. Hawkeye has been renewed for a 2nd season. Clint's brother, Barney, will play a major role, and the season will be inspired by The Raid, with Kate and Clint stuck in one location. Well, I am a fan of The Raid, but I did want to take this time to talk about this book. Tales of Suspense 57, first appearance of Hawkeye. This is an interesting key because it's one of those ones that a lot of people use as what I like to call a ladder book. You know what I mean by when I say a ladder book? It's a book that people use as the stepping stone to swing into maybe the more desirable key. I actually kind of equate this book and Tales of Suspense 52, First Black Widow, as I also do equate Avengers 57, also Captain America 117, books like that, Thor 165, First Warlock, things of those nature. No disrespect to those books, but if you can trade your first Hawkeye, your first Black Widow, and your first Vision for, an ASM 14 First Goblin, I think a lot of collectors are going to do that. And I think that that's why I call it sort of ladder books. But this is definitely one that has been, dropping off a lot. And it's going to take a little bit of, some pop in the cultural aspect to bring the eyeballs back to this book. And it's kind of interesting to follow along, as we get, season 2s of these shows that have taken so long. I mean, it's 5 years old at this point. And while, of course, the top end of these books have dropped off tremendously, it feels like the floor is still there for the most part. Where here at the 9.0 range, much higher grade, the floor for this is still 4,025. Obviously, it's come down from the 8,400 that this book saw in 2022, but still higher than the floor prices of 2019 and 2018. And even if you go down here to a more reasonable, say, grade, where you go to the 7.0 range, you can see the floor is still 840, which is above the 2020 floor of 650 and 2019 660. So again, we're not getting the high-end sales, but we are getting, strong floor sales for a lot of these books. Here, even at the 4.0 range, where the highs are 460 and the lows are 317, even with that low of 317, still sits above the lows of 228 and 261. So even though we're selling lower than some of the high sales, where you saw 450 in 2020 and 400 in 2019, it's basically the floor has been lifted for a lot of these books. So, the question has always been, is the floor going to drop out? Are we actually going to go back down to 2019, 2018 prices? And based on what we see here, and we look at all the indexes and we kind of try to figure it out for ourselves, inflation is just going to drive up the floor prices for some of these books. And, there's enough, at least dealers out there that are willing to pick them up, until everything, of course, goes to zero. Speaking of books going to zero, the last one I wanted to check in on was Shang-Chi 2, Special Marvel Edition 15. Whatever happened to this thing? This is one that, again, man, oh man, has the floor dropped off on this one, where you can see Special Marvel Edition 15 here at the 9.8 range. Last sale, $41.80. A low sale, $26.40. Can you guys believe that? Someone got a good buy here in February for $26.40 at a 9.8 book. I mean, you got to go all the way back to, 2018. There you go. 2018, the high, 2,500 for this one. But this is also another book that, a lot of these keys got inflated in 2018, because 2018 was when they started to kind of announce that they were going to, do a lot of these Phase 4 projects. So you have to sort of wonder, okay, is this book still elevated? Because nobody cared about it in 2017 and 2016. But now that it is in the culture, now that it is in the comic collectors' minds, has it now been established as a key in general? Although if you go here to the 9.0, you can see from this graph, I mean, the sales we're getting for this book now, selling lower than what it was going for even pre-COVID 2021. I think people have been so scorned over how much the value they've lost in these books. And a lot of the reasons that they've lost so much value is because so many books have come to the market to be graded. There was always these copies that were out there. People had 9.0 raw copies, but nobody was ever really incentivized to send them in for grading because there was really no demand for them, or there was no need to get, quote unquote, the max value out of it. But once you saw the spikes in prices, once you saw, the fervor go around it, that's when all these books got sent in for grading. And now we're sort of having to deal with all of the excess copies that are now sitting in slabs. You can see here, 2024 price for this, the low of a 9.0 is 184. Again, you have to go all the way back to 2018 to find the lows where it was 82, 118 in 2017, and actually 140 in 2016, 175 in 2014. So that's really interesting there. 175 a low in 2014 was because, there probably weren't that many graded. There was only 2 sales back then. There was only 2 people that actually wanted to have it in a slab. But that's all I got for this video. Me just taking a quick look at the market for Vision, West Coast Avengers number 45, some of these Phase 4 projects. I don't know. There's something just so nostalgic to me about doing the channel and looking back and seeing, these books get hot once again in the market. It's so funny. The longer you do this, the longer you go, every book comes back around once again. It'll be interesting to see what actually happens to this book in the future. What'll happen when we get trailers? What'll happen when we start to see the show? Maybe we'll reach those record prices once again. Probably not. Anyways, that's all I got for this one. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think about this book overall? I already know your answers. This book is worthless. It's going to zero. Never buy West Coast Avengers number 45. But hey, the market is the market. There's going to be new collectors all of the time, and FOMO will never die. Anyways, that's all I got for this one. Like, comment, subscribe. See you all in the next video.